All right, everybody, we're back to do more asks. I'm going to dive right in. I might actually get to the bottom of my inbox this week. We'll have to see. All right. I've recently been doing a rewatch, and it's crazy how often they show rabbits, plush rabbits, deer, something happening to one eye, calling someone a Pied Piper, finding lost siblings, all other symbols we've seen, etc. Yeah. I mean, there's still a lot of people who like to say that we don't know what we're talking about or we're overanalyzing things, but once you start looking for them, they're impossible to unsee, and there's no way all of these symbols are being put in over and over again by accident. They have to be purposeful, or we wouldn't see them as often as we do. So yeah, I'm interested in the Pied Piper one. That's not one I pay as much attention to. So yeah, I would love to hear how many times you've seen that and where, so we can analyze a little bit more. But I usually catch the rabbits and the deer and the one eye stuff. Lost siblings, yeah, another big one. So yeah, totally agree, and thanks for sending that in. Do you think any of the symbolism in the show has become null and void due to filming changes, or do you think everything is still in play? For the most part, everything is still in play. When something changes, they will actually change the symbolism, and usually it's only a little bit. So, I mean, the only thing that would have become null and void is if it's something specifically around a character that is not returning. So I think, like, whatever symbolism they had. Let me give you a really good example here. Let's talk about Tyrese for a minute. Back at the prison, when everything went down, when Herschel got killed and the prison got bulldozed, after that, we saw Tyrese with the girls, right? He was with Lizzie and Mika, and he had Judith. And he had a cut on his arm. And it happened at the prison when he was fighting. And it was pretty bad. It was infected. He had a fever. And then when Carol got there, found them, and was helping him, she was able to find some of that tree sap, which is an antifungal, I think, to put on his arm. And eventually it healed. Now, that seemed like a little bit of a throwaway storyline, specifically the arm injury, because he was sick, but then when Carol got there, he healed and everything was fine, and it's like, okay, well, why did they do that? It was a foreshadowing. The place where his arm got cut and where he had the cut that got infected was exactly the place he got bit in 509 when he died. So that was a foreshadowing of Tyrese's death. The fact that he had a fever, the fact that there was a scene where he was like having a bad dream, a fever dream, and sort of kicked himself awake, and Carol was keeping watch, so she was just watching him and he was watching her, but it was very much because of the fever that was happening. But again, foreshadow of how he was going to die, and there was going to be this big death hallucination, right? So I would say that symbolism, I wouldn't call it null and void, but it's no longer in play because it was fulfilled. They fulfilled it in his death, and they fulfilled everything to do with that character before they took them off the show. And they do that with most characters. Another really good example of, well, specifically them doing that is with the Jesus character, because we know that he asked to be let out of his contract because he just wasn't as main a character as he wanted to be. He was more of a side character. And he thought when he got the job that he would have more lines and be on screen more. So as an actor, he just wanted to move on and do more central roles. Well, they were willing to let him do that. But Angela King said, okay, you got to give me a few episodes so that I can give you a good send-off, but also so that they could figure out and fulfill the symbolism, okay? She made him wait. She didn't let him out of his contract right away. She did let him out eventually, and much earlier than the contract allowed for, but she made him give her, I don't know what it was, like the rest of the season, or 10 or 12 episodes, or whatever it was, so that she could work it in, and it's because they are very concerned about making sure that the symbolism is fulfilled, right? So whatever they were going to do, they just figured it out, and then they did let him out of his contract. So I always say that they're very respectful to the actors if they want to leave. Sometimes a lot of the actors will ask to stay instead of dying, and usually they're like, no, if we wrote it this way, you got to go, because most of them like working on the show and would choose to stay. But anyway, so the one actor that they didn't do that with is Beth, right? She had a ton of symbolism around her that was never fulfilled, and that is a big part of the reason originally that TD sprung up and said, wait, she's got way further to go, and they don't do this. They don't just randomly kill off characters without fulfilling the symbolism first, And there's nowhere that they fulfilled any of the symbolism that I shouldn't say any, I guess, but most of the symbolism that they laid out for her. I mean, stuff about her and Daryl, her and the kid symbolism, the new sheriff's in town symbolism. They had the whole thing after the show, like on Talking Dead, where they said, raised by Herschel, trained by Daryl, meet the new Beth Green, only to kill her off an episode later. Like, that doesn't make sense. What was all that setup for? You know what I mean? And this is another reason why I have such a big problem with people saying, oh, they just changed their minds and decided to scrap it. No, they really don't do that. If Emily went to them and said, guys, I'm done, I want to be out, I want to get let out of my contract, they probably would have let her do that, but they would have taken the arc and said, okay, give us 10 or 12 episodes, let us figure this out so that we can write you out in a way that has integrity for what we've already set up and also give you a good send-off, right? And this is exactly why I'm positive that they didn't just change their mind, because they would have done that. Another thing that I hear a lot is people get upset about, like, Sasha getting a really big send-off when she left, and other actors that have happened for, and why didn't they do that with Emily? And everyone tends to default to, they were just hating on Emily, and I default to, no, it's because she didn't really leave. It's because she's coming back. You know what I mean? Like, they would have done that if she was just leaving. But that's not what happened, right? So anyway, sorry, this is kind of a long, rambling answer. But yeah, I do think everything is still in play. I mean, we actually see a lot of the symbolism that still continues to crop up. You know, I try to say that even in Dead City or Daryl Dixon or whatever, you know, whenever we see it, it's like, okay, well, there's the one-eye symbolism, that's still in play. There's the deer symbolism, that's still in play. And all of this came out of season 4, you know, for the most part. So yeah, 100%, I think it's still in play. And, I was saying sometimes they will change the symbolism if something changes. The biggest example of that I can think of is the fact that Melissa didn't do the first season of Daryl Dixon, and once they figured that out, they created that episode. It was one of the bonus episodes in season 10 called Diverged, and it showed Daryl and Carol parting ways for a time and then coming back together. And we had not seen that particular symbolism before that point, but I think they put that in because Melissa came to them and said, okay, I'm not going to be able to do the first season. Can I push it back? Can I just do the second season from then on, but I can't do the first? And so they went, okay, that's fine. We can make that work, but we got to put in symbolism to show that. So that's what I mean when I say, guys, they are paying attention. They are putting in symbolism to show us stuff, to foreshadow stuff. I'm sure there have been a few times that a few little things have fallen through the cracks and nothing they could do about it, but it's not anything massive. It's not anything like every single shred of symbolism they ever had around Beth. Oops. No, it doesn't work that way, right? So 100%, it's all still in play, and it's got to come out somewhere, or sometime or another. And then I also say, too, the same thing about the filming, the missing scenes that they filmed in season 5. If they had decided to scrap it, if they really were like, okay, we're not using this anymore, we're not doing this, they would have shown us those scenes. They would have come out as DVD extras. One of the guys who owned the property they filmed at, it was a private property, and, you know, they paid him to let them film there. He said on his social media that he was allowed to take pictures while they were filming on set, so he probably has pictures with the actors, with Emily and anyone else who was there. But they told him he could not post those pictures until the footage aired. To this day, the footage has not aired, and he has not posted any pictures. If they were not going to air the footage, they would say, okay, actually, we're not using it, we're scrapping it, go ahead and put your pictures on. He hasn't done it yet. They haven't let him yet, which means they're still planning to air that footage in the future. So it has to come out at some point. This is just what I'm saying, right? But yeah, great question, and thanks for sending that in. All right, next one. You talk a lot of how Daryl was maybe not emotionally mature enough in season 4 for a romantic relationship. Now that he's had the thing with Leah and then Isabel, do you think he's ready for a happy ending? When Beth returns, do you think they'll get together right away, or will there be more of a slow burn? Part of me thinks this has been the slowest burn in TV history, yes, so we deserve the ones who live rompfest right away. But I also kind of want to see the relationship progress slowly. We barely got the acknowledgement of feelings in season 4, so wouldn't they kind of need to start back at square one? Okay, so I do think he's ready for a happy ending. I think that's the point. And Gimple has all but said this. There was a time that he was being interviewed. I want to say it was at the end of the... No, you know what? It was... No, okay, so it was after Leah. I think it was at the end of the flagship show. I was going to say maybe it was for the Leah storyline, but I think it actually came a year or two later that they were specifically interviewing Gimple, and they wouldn't have done that as much during season 10 because he was not the showrunner. But then they asked him, so why do the Leah storyline? Like, can we ask you, as the showrunner, why do that? And he said, well, you know, that's growing up. And to me, that was him saying that was how he was getting Daryl to be more emotionally mature, by having gone through a relationship. Like, plain and simple. They needed him to grow up and to have some experience with relationships, which he didn't have before that. So that's like from the showrunner himself, from Gimple's own mouth. That is why they did the Leah storyline, okay? Was there all kinds of symbolism and all kinds of fun stuff and all kinds of shipping wars and all kinds of other things? Yeah. But that was the main reason they did it in terms of Daryl's arc, okay? So yes, he is ready for a happy ending. The fact that he's looking for it. I mean, in season 4, even if someone hit on him, he would have had his head down, he would have been shy about it, but we see him looking at other couples, and he very much pursued Isabel because he wants a companion. And so just that, anyone who's doing that is ready, so 100%, I do think he's ready for a happy ending. And the fact that we had Judith's voiceover saying that at the beginning of the first season, Daryl Dixon, tells us that that's where they're headed with it. As to whether they'll get together right away, I think you're right that they're going to need to start at square one, not only because we didn't get much of an acknowledgement back then, but also because they haven't seen each other in 10 plus years now, right? So that they could be very different people, and I'm not saying that they will be, I'm not saying in a bad way that we're not going to like, but from a realism perspective, they kind of need to get to know each other again, right? But even saying that, I think it will go pretty fast. I think Daryl knows exactly what he wants, and when they come back together, it's going to feel to them, once they start talking, like they saw each other yesterday. You know how that happens with people that you really know well and trust, and it doesn't even have to be in romantic relationships. Like, I have people from high school that I went to high school with who we only see each other once a year because we have our own lives and live far apart now, but when we come back together, it's like we just pick up where we left off, right? I think it's going to feel that way for them, for Beth and Daryl, but of course, there's going to be the romantic element there. So I think they will be starting at square one, but at the same time, I think the romance is going to progress really, really quickly because they already have the foundation there. And they're going to come back together, they're going to swap stories, and it's going to be like they never left each other. So a little of both is my opinion. But I don't think that they will, unfortunately, as much as we're all excited about it, I don't think they're going to do the TWDU romp right away. I just don't think that either Beth or Daryl are that kind of person, so they're going to need to get to know each other on a more emotional level, and then we'll see the hookup. So anyway, either way, I'm excited for it. I'm here for it, however it plays out. Great question. All right, I think I have time for one more here. It always bothered me that Daryl and Beth didn't get a last exchange in the hospital, not even a camera pan showing that they were sharing a look across the hallway or something. We see his devastation after the gunshot, but before that, no relief or joy at seeing her again. Then he barely touches her shoulder when they get her back before shit goes sideways. Do you think some kind of look-hug interaction like that was filmed and then taken out? Why do you think their contact was so minimal in that scene? Were they saving that emotional payout for their actual return down the line? So this is one of those questions that I have to preface with, we don't know. Okay, there could be a million different reasons for this, and we just don't know what they are. That said, I will discuss a few possibilities. So a lot of people, pointed out at the time that it was a very tense situation, and even though, we want to see them hug and everything, they probably wouldn't have until the situation was resolved. I mean, even if you look back earlier in that season to Terminus, I mean, it's a little different because the reunion didn't come until after the drama, but if even like Sasha and Tyrese had seen each other while the escape from Terminus was happening, they probably still wouldn't have hugged. They were running for their lives. You know what I mean? And so it was a little different in that case because by the time everybody got to the cabin and you had Sasha and Tyrese reuniting and Rick reuniting with Judith, most of the drama had passed. But if it hadn't, you just have to put survival first and make sure everything's okay. And it was just really too tense to do that. I mean, you could even say the same thing about Daryl and Carol. She's his best friend, and he didn't know if she was okay. He actually saw her get hit by a car. So he could have run to hug her too, but he didn't because there was too much tension in the air. So from a realism standpoint, I think that's the main reason. In terms of the more, what you're saying, the artistic element and why didn't it show them staring at each other, I think it kind of did. It didn't zoom in on it. I think they were exchanging looks, but you're right that that's like an intentional choice to not zoom in on it, to not show her face up close and his face up close and show them looking at each other. I think it might have had a lot to do with the death fake out and that they wanted it to be more tragic and that they didn't want to... I mean, at this point, they were still kind of in... What am I trying to say? the powers that be were still very much trying not to confirm romantic feelings at this point. Because, you know, we have that thing that I think it happened between season 4 and season 5 where they posted new bios on AMC, and in those bios they said that Beth understood that Daryl had feelings for her, and the fandom read that and freaked out that they actually confirmed that. And then within like an hour they took them down because the fans freaked out. So we had little things like Norman kind of confirmed it. Somebody asked him, I think on a panel, you know, if Beth hadn't been shot, would there have been romance there? And he said, well, there was a taste of it in the air, which is pretty much him saying yes, that it was there at least as a possibility. But the powers that be were like refusing to actually say that. So this might have been part of that. They didn't want to 100% confirm it here. And, you know, I don't know why. You could go back and forth about why they did or didn't. Maybe it had to do with the shipping wars. Maybe it had to do with the backlash that they were dealing with from the carolers and other people. I actually think it maybe had a lot to do with just like the theme, where they were in the arc. I mean, we always say, because they said that if Daryl had feelings for Beth, he didn't understand them because, again, he was not emotionally mature in terms of relationships, romantic relationships yet. So it could be that, you know, them showing him looking at her like that would have been a little too on the nose, or it would have been like almost like suggesting he was more sure of himself about his feelings for her than he was. And I think that something like that could be why the showrunners decided to do it this way. But again, we don't know for sure. I have often thought, and I kind of hope this is the case, that maybe all of that stuff we wanted to see, they didn't put it in Coda, but a lot of us think they're going to go back and show us all of that again. Like we might, not only, we've got the missing scenes from season 5, but not even that. Like I think they're going to show us what happened in Coda with the understanding of who it was who actually shot Beth. You know, because there was stuff going on there we didn't understand. There was stuff going on at Grady that, I mean, we understand it, but they just weren't really on the nose with it. They didn't explain it. So there was the ward system. There was clearly rape going on, but there were other things too, like were they experimenting? Did they have a cure? You know, all of those things. And then who actually shot Beth? I mean, I maintain that if it was Dawn who shot her, we're missing a whole 5 seconds where she took her gun out of her holster. So if they just cut that out to throw us off, then they're going to have to show it to us and show, you know, her taking her gun out and why that works. Personally, I don't think it was Dawn. I don't think that we're missing that. I think it was somebody else that shot her. And if that's the case, then they're going to have to reveal who shot Beth and why. So all of that, all of the questions we have around Grady, I think they're going to show us that sequence again, but with all the information that we're missing the first time around. And if that's the case, the other thing that I always notice is that Daryl leans down over Beth's body. And we don't see that really obviously in the show, in the episode, because the camera doesn't focus on it, but you have to kind of be looking around. I think the shot is from behind Daryl, and it's showing, you know, like the camera's on the Grady cops who are facing them. And you can just see the top of his head at the very bottom of the screen, which means he's crouched down over Beth, like over her body. And we didn't see that, not really. We don't see his face. We don't see what he does. We don't see if he picks her up, or, I mean, well, we know he picks her up eventually. We don't see him pick her up and carry her out. We just see them outside. So I kind of, all of this that I'm totally rambling here, is to say that maybe they'll show those looks, those hugs, those interactions, whatever was going on, even if it's just camera work, close up on their faces and showing him leaning over her body like that. I'm wondering if they'll show us that when she returns. But I mean, I don't, like what you ask here is, are they saving that for down the line when she returns? I mean, I'm sure they will hug when he finds her again and everything. But I'm saying I think they're going to go back and show us the Grady stuff, and maybe then they'll give us the camera work of them looking at each other. And you know what I mean? I'm wondering if they're saving those particular shots, even from the Grady scene, until we actually see it all and have the whole truth. I'm hoping so, because I would like that. So yeah, again, that was a lot of rambling to answer your question, but at the end of the day, we don't really know. I don't know that I think they actually filmed a hug and then cut it out or anything. I don't think that was the case. I just think they could give us more of the like close-up shots of them staring at each other. But yeah, I certainly hope they do. And I hope that answers your question. So great question. All right, guys, I'm going to call it there for today. We'll have episode 6 of Dead City dropping on Sunday, and I will plan to be back then. Bye.